Hey everyone, welcome to the Magnetic Online Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Stefi Lane. And today we have a very exciting guest, someone that's very special and also a client. And we're talking about, in this episode, about reshaping the way user experience is seen, felt, experienced, and public health. Let me introduce you to Lena Clark, founder of Sunflower UX. Lena has a unique way of blending UX research and public health. This allows her to bridge the gap between tech solutions and real human needs, and it's actually really inspiring. She's worked from everything from tech startups to healthcare providers, improving products and services, and has touched many lives and has worked on things that I'm sure that you have utilized and used in your daily life. Her approach is to combine data science, but also to deeply understand the user's behavior. She is all about knowing the why. And I love Lena because she is a client of ours and also she's an extraordinary human being where she really knows and really wants to find out the answer to why and why we do things and then how to improve it. That's what she's all about. She's all about solutions and making things better. And today we're going to dive into all things UX, empathy, how Lena brings this into her everyday work, her approach. And this was such an eye-opening experience for me because I understand the user experience, but I've never really seen it from like this different lens that she brings. And it was really good for me to understand how everything is UX and how can we enhance it? How can we make it better? How can we improve it? And how can we better serve our human needs and wants? Thank you so much. Have a listen. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Lena Clark. Hi.
Hi, Stefi. Thanks for having me.
I was just mentioning this to you offline that we met in person yesterday in real life. That was amazing because, yeah, we just don't get to do that very often.
Yeah, that was awesome. It's always great to actually hug the people that you've been kind of going through the trenches with. So I really appreciate y'all inviting me yesterday.
Of course. And I'm glad to have seen you and you ask great questions. And that's essentially what I brought you on this podcast for, is because you get paid to ask questions, to research. You
hmm
are an expert user experience researcher,
hmm
and which is short for UX. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then let's just go with the basics. Like, what is a UX? What is that? Someone that has never heard that term before. What is it?
Yeah. So basically, I like to look at complex systems and I like to look at the users of those systems and ask questions that will help them navigate it. Now, when I say user, that can be your end client, it can be you yourself or the people that work for you, anyone that's involved in a larger system and moving towards a shared goal. All of those people are users. They all have different needs, pain points. So, something that frustrates them or might prevent them from being successful in their task. And when you understand what all of those things are, you're able to come together and build better systems.
Mm. It's so interesting because yesterday I signed up for a membership and it was her first time doing this membership. And I emailed her because I couldn't find where to download the app.
Mhm.
Like they'd never sent the info for the app. The whole thing was like, we have an app. We have an app. I'm like, well, where's the app? And so I had to email them. Of course, I was kind about it, but I was like, hey, you might want to add this to your systems. And you start to realize how important the user experience is. And of course, it's their first time, so I'm not going to dock down their points,
Yeah.
but I'm glad they took that feedback and they responded.
And that's the whole thing. When we look at systems, especially as we're building new ones, there's so many touch points. There's so much to do to make it feel intuitive. So I'm always encouraging people, listen to your audience. They will tell you exactly what's missing or what they need. Now,
Mhm.
they're not always right. That can be another thing. But yeah, one of my favorite makeup artists finally released some makeup products. And then he would send out an email asking for feedback, and there was nowhere to actually leave any feedback. So I had to do the same thing and email him and say, hey, like, give me a link.
Yeah, like, "What do you want me to do? Telepathically send it to you?"
Yeah. It's like, if I could, I would because I love them. The product's great, but I want people to know the product's great.
Mhm. How did you get into this field? Like, tell me the story. I wanna hear it.
So I have a very interesting kind of career story. I'm the daughter of a teacher, and I would be up at the schools in the summers helping her write her lesson plans. And from that young age, I kind of realized that the school systems were designed in a certain way to where if your brain worked a certain way, if you could receive information in the way that they were relaying it, you were going to succeed. But if your brain processed information differently, you needed additional resources to make
That was
sure that
me.
you would be yeah,
Mhm.
me as well. And so through that, I started to wonder, okay, if we can do lesson plans differently and make it where more students are successful, then what happens when you allocate resources in different areas? Can we expand what success looks like or who is able to achieve success? From there in high school, I started doing research with Gallaudet University, which is the only school in or the only college in America for the liberal arts for the deaf and hard of hearing. And we were working with a little boy who had been adopted by some Americans. Part of his brain was missing, so he wasn't able to speak. And it's the part that controls the fine motor skills as well. So we weren't sure if he'd ever be able to learn sign language. So, with all of the hands on support that he got, eventually we were able to get him to learn sign language and also speak a couple of words, which was amazing and just kind of kept me going like, what else can we achieve if we just keep putting the resources there? I went on to get a degree in sociology, which I absolutely loved. I'm still friends with a lot of my professors to this day because it just showed me I wasn't the only one looking at things through a systematic lens. And then I went on to Texas A&M and M and got a master's in public health, where I was doing human factors research, which is the more I describe it as the more like hands-on version of user experience research. So I'm inside of factories looking at the ergonomics, looking at the noise pollution, ensuring that the workers are safe as they're completing their day-to-day tasks, and loved all of that. Ended up doing research for I can't say all the names of the places, but a lot of oil and gas, a lot of
You
people that
signed a
like
lot of NDAs probably.
a lot of NDAs, yeah. I've done research for some people that like to make things go up in space,
Mm.
all sorts of fields. And when all of that was done, I decided to just transition over to tech, and user experience research was the cousin to all the human factors research I had been doing, and fell in love with it. Quickly rose up through the ranks doing both freelance and working for international organizations.
Mhm.
And so now I do a lot of freelance and I do a lot of mentorship as well.
Okay. I love that the user experience can seem like a very technical thing, but it's actually at the core of it, it's a very empathetic thing.
It is.
Can you speak about the empathy component about it?
Yeah, it's really common for people to see someone that's struggling to achieve something and assume that that person is just wrong. They're doing it wrong or they weren't smart enough, or maybe it's not always that harsh, but just assume that they are the problem and the system is not the problem. And so, especially since I'm a qualitative researcher, so that means that going to listen to people and I'm going to hear a lot about their emotions and their drivers and things of that nature. Through having the conversations that I have with participants, we're able to realize, hey, this person tried all of these things, or maybe they're not using the right tool, but they had no way of knowing that. And in doing so, the people that are in charge of creating the systems, the tools, the procedures, what have you, they can create them in a way that's going to be more intuitive.
Mhm.
Our biggest goal is to make it where people don't have to think. I'm
Mhm.
not saying that I want a whole population of people that are not turning their brains on, but let's say that you are in an emergency and you need to figure out how to use that EpiPen. I don't want you reading chapters on the ethics of EpiPen access or any. No, I need to push the green button,
Yeah.
wait 10 seconds, throw this away safely.
You're actually speaking to me directly because I actually have an EpiPen because
Oh,
I'm allergic to bees.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
and when you see the EpiPen, because you only have a certain amount of time, and I've had to train myself, and when I'm in, like, situations or retreats or something, I've had to go up to the people and be like, "Hey, I have an EpiPen. If I get stung by a bee, I might go into anaphylactic shock. Please make sure that you put it in my thigh or my butt, and then you have to make sure you call 911." Like, I had to give them instructions,
Mhm.
and sometimes they get nervous or, like, but I'm like, "I'm just giving you worst case scenario. I just wanna tell you." But my EpiPen, I've seen the progression because before it was just like this crazy syringe and you had to like pull the thing out. Now it's like, pull it out, twist it, put it in your butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just put it on your butt.
And that's something, especially because I have my public health background,
Mhm.
I love infusing user experience research into those medical opportunities, basically,
Mhm.
because ideally, with these interventions, we can design them in a way to where it doesn't matter what's going on. Someone can always be there to help you out as long as they know that she was stung by a bee. Action needs to be taken right now. Because you can even have someone that's been trained in all of this extensively, but if it's a different EpiPen than what their hospital uses, okay, well, now we're kind of back at that novice level and we need to walk them through the system and make sure that they can accurately complete the task as quickly and efficiently as possible because it's an emergency.
Yeah.
We want our Steffi to be alive.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, yeah. Oof. Anyways, not gonna put that won't happen. What is interesting about systems, and especially because the US has its issues, totally. We could do a whole podcast on that. But and I've traveled a lot, and you're a traveler.
Mhm.
And I've seen some systems, like, when I went to the UK and I'm gonna go TMI here. I had a UTI and I needed an antibiotic, like, fast. And I went and they got me in. I had to wait a little bit, but they got me in, got me the antibiotic. I was fine. But then I've been to other countries where I've had support or systems. What I'm trying to say is when you're in different countries, you have different systems. Which countries have you noticed like, "Oh, I like these systems," and which countries you're like, "Oh, this is interesting how they're doing this," if from your travel experience?
Yeah, so it's interesting. As you know, I'm just a serial traveler. I am always somewhere new. I
Or
don't even know. I
you
need to
should
sit
kind
down and count them. I need to get one of those calendars where you like scratch off
Mhm.
from around the world.
Like 20, you think? 20.
I guess
Okay.
probably, yeah. And so it's a little bit of a cheat because I wasn't even born in the United States. I was born in the Netherlands.
Mhm.
And my parents actually lived in Germany when they had me. So they drove to the Netherlands. So I started out on the road. So Air Force brat, that's how it goes. So yeah, I get asked these questions a lot about like where has different systems that I appreciate or that I can compare and contrast. And I'm always so balanced in my approach and in my like favorites and all of that. I appreciated out when I was in Thailand, it was very easy for me when I had a medical emergency to walk directly into the pharmacy and say, this is what's going on. And I'm pretty sure that this is the medicine that I need because I am educated in how to do, real research. I believe in science and have that conversation and get what I needed really quickly, really efficiently. And the price was way better than what I was anticipating. And so, of course, I really liked that. But obviously, there are also flaws in those systems. I was coming in as someone that had more medical knowledge and financial resources.
Mhm.
So when I talked to the locals, which thankfully I know a lot of locals out there, they can highlight some issues with the access that they are able to have to that medical knowledge. And so it's always such a balance. I do know that I have a lot of friends that have recently moved to the Netherlands
Mm.
and they're like, they won't prescribe us anything out here. They make us just kind of suffer through, especially with allergies. So I am remembering that the next time I go out there, if it's allergy season, like to really be prepared.
Stock up on the Claritin or whatever you need.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, it's crazy to see that each country and each place has their own systems, the ways that they have things, and also it can be a contributing factor of, many things, right?
Hmm.
Resources, education, people, all the things.
Hmm.
With your experience in public health, why public health, and we spoke a little bit about it, but like the EpiPen, but why public health and why is user experience extremely important?
So when I was figuring out what I wanted to do in school, which I didn't know all along that this is where I wanted to land, I
Mhm.
can ask my parents, they have plenty of wrinkles and gray hair over it. I knew that at the end of the day, I wanted a job that helped people and I wanted a job that helped as many people as possible so that any effort I was putting out there would actually be able to trickle around to everybody that
Mm.
needed it. And so my older sister, who is a physician, she started out doing rural public health. And I would go see her presentations and the showcases at her schools. And I started to think, okay, this is interesting. And then, but back then, my understanding of public health was that it was for those with like a really strong science background, those that were trying to go into traditional medical like offices or hospitals or things. As I researched it more, I realized that there was also this side where they really needed people with like the sociology and the anthropology backgrounds, because you can do all of the scientific research in the world, but if people can't understand or make something fit into the context of their personal lives, then it's completely wasted.
Mhm.
$1 billion projects will go down the drain because that end user was not centered.
Mhm.
For example, one of my kind of favorite case studies to highlight is that there was an initiative to do more for rural public health, especially for men, and they had a lot of like young nurses that were from the inner city that would go out there and try to teach these rural countrymen how to be healthier. That sounds great. You're bringing knowledge from a population that didn't have it to a population that
They're
really need it.
they're not gonna listen.
Here was the issue.
Mhm.
The young nurses were predominantly white.
Mm.
The men in the rural populations that they were going for were predominantly men of color, and they had grown up just under the shadow of segregation. I know we don't think that still has as many impacts on society, but for these older populations, it absolutely does. So
Mhm.
these nurses would come in and they would ask questions or give advice, and these men would just shut down because it wasn't within their social reality to
Mhm.
interact with these people, especially in a vulnerable way. They didn't have trust that if they were to speak up, that information would not be used negatively. Or also, if you tell someone in a rural population to go do Pilates or go get more organic foods, like that's not a reality. If they're in a food desert, if all that they can do is go for
Just
walks in
eat
their
weird
neighborhood,
green juice.
yeah, right. Like, if you go into a culture and you tell them, oh, well, all of your cultural foods are terrible for you, you shouldn't
Mm.
eat any of them, that's not really the case. Usually there's more ways to like align with the reality of their lived experiences so that you can get those shared health goals and make sure that they're successful.
That's so interesting. I saw a meme. It was supposed to be funny, but it was like an old public health video, and someone said they were trying to cancel Mexican food, and it was a video from, like, the '80s, and
Mm,
they're like, "Mexican food is so bad for you, blah, 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 blah," and then they interviewed some patrons of the Mexican restaurant, and they were like, "It's rice and beans, like, it's good, I feel fine," and, they it was just this weird piece they were trying to do. I don't know what their angle was, but anyways, I just thought that was interesting.
yeah, I saw that video as well. And the actual conversation that I wish they had was, okay, along with your rice and beans, here's how to get more vegetables in there. Or now that you've got all of this energy from the rice and beans you had, here's some fun exercises that you can do. I'm a huge lover of dance because every culture has dance. Well, not every, most cultures have dance, except
No.
for the ones that have decided that dance is not a good
Yeah,
thing to do.
yeah, because yeah, anyways, side
Yeah.
note.
And so encouraging people to do movement and have fun. Sometimes I'll get my dad's older, he's a veteran, he's disabled from that service. And so there's not much exercise he can do, but sometimes he'll catch me dancing in the living room with the dogs and he'll start
Mhm.
dancing too. And now we've got some movement going on. So are we training for the Olympics? No. Are we getting up and moving and just also helping those endorphins enter us? Yes.
Mm. And you mentioned about like certain campaigns, how they hit really well and some campaigns don't. Like I remember in the 80s, the one where you cut the Coke cans to make sure that the turtles don't eat. Like I still do that.
Oh, yeah. I'll
That
do
works
it for the rest of my
immensely.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand now we don't really need to do that in most cases,
No, we
and
don't
that's
need to,
great,
but when we did.
but I'm always going to do it, and it was just such a pure thing. They gave us the visuals. It wasn't even I know that they were showing us scary things, but they weren't trying to shame us. They were
Mhm.
just educating us.
Educating one, yes, yeah,
Mhm.
and that one stuck. That one was a
Yeah.
good one because when I see some public campaigns, especially when we had I try not to say it, but when we had the C thing, when we had that some of the campaigns, I'm like, "Okay, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense." Like, it just felt so there was an agenda behind each one
Mhm.
for sure, where that one was, like, pure, "Just help the turtles out, cut it up."
Yeah. There's a public safety campaign from, I think, Australia, and they made a cute jingle that's just dumb ways to die. And for the longest, I would hear that jingle, and I didn't know it was a part of a public safety campaign. And they listed, when you go back and listen to it, they are talking about all of these things to do to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself alive. But they did it in such a fun and approachable way that people were just chilling with the audio. It started trending online. There's ways of disseminating knowledge that feels intuitive and not like you're trying to manipulate the user. That
Mm,
is so important, and that is always my goal. I'm not always in a position of power to control how my research will be used, although I will go to bat. I always protect my participants. I try to make sure things are as above the board as possible. At the end of the day, what people do with knowledge, there's a lot of power with knowledge, and you can disseminate it in ways that are respectful to the populations. An example, something that I've been playing around with is I actually made a graphic novel where I am a superhero and I'm disseminating public health knowledge. And it's backed by science. It's we're trying to do things that are supported by the cultures of the populations that we're trying to serve. Here's the science, here's the cultural reality, here's how the two can come together. And let's just have some fun with it because at the end of the day, if something is mean or negative or making you feel like crap, you're not going to use the information. You might go do the exact opposite of the
you
information.
will rebel, you'll get mad, like, the whole campaigns with, like, the seatbelts when they did in the '70s, like, people were rebelling, they hated the seatbelts, and I don't know, maybe something they changed in the '80s, and we finally started to put seatbelts, but it's when you empower your user, they start to feel more empowered, and then they're more magnetic, and then they take the habits, and then they teach the habits to their kids, and everything is like a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah, I so some of the research I did while I was in graduate school, I was looking at African American hair breeders here in the United States, and I learned all these things in my occupational health and safety classes, and I was like, I know a population that hasn't had access to this information, so I'm gonna walk in and I'm gonna teach them all these things like a grad student does.
Yeah.
And I'm happy I did this research because on the one hand, I was able to highlight kind of to these institutional systems that there were plenty of jobs that they weren't covering with their research. That was huge. But then on the other side, as a researcher, I learned a good lesson about not assuming that my users are ignorant of information.
Mm,
Obviously, I have the highest respect for hair breeders. That's a very hard job. They're standing up for 9, 12 plus hours doing all sorts of just complicated, beautiful, artistic styles. If they're injured and they can't work, they will not have money. They cannot keep going.
mhm,
So, one of my biggest findings was that these women, and there were a couple of men as well in the study, even though they didn't have the institutional knowledge that I was getting from my graduate program, they were so in tune with themselves and in what worked that they were already modulating their tasks. For example, charging more money for hairstyles that caused them a lot of physical strain
mhm.
so that they were doing them less frequently and they were able to not have to take another client right afterwards because they made enough financially to be
Yeah,
okay.
or they need a break in between or something.
Exactly. And I think I'm so happy that I learned that so early in my research career because now when I'm going in and I'm talking to different participants, clients, what have you, I've learned to never assume and to always get that baseline and understand like what are they already doing? Usually they've already found the solution. I'm just here to amplify that solution and make sure that the decision makers understand what to do with the fact that that solution exists.
Yeah. I feel like that's a pretty young thing we do sometimes too. We come in guns a-blazing, thinking that we know everything. We read a book on it, and then we're like, "This is the knowledge. I know it all." And it comes off as ignorant because you just don't know. And then the people are like, "Oh my goodness, like, you little you."
It was a good lesson in code switching because at that point I was doing so much research where I would walk into a factory with a clipboard and my collared shirt, and I had the cutest steel toe boots. They were like a baby blue color and they looked more like tennis shoes and
Can
they
you
did
explain
work boots.
code switching? I know a little bit about it, but can you explain it?
But yeah, so code switching is basically, when we go into different environments,
Mhm,
we will show slightly different parts of ourselves.
mhm.
So, obviously, if I'm doing a public speaking event, I'm going to dress a lot nicer. I'm going to do my makeup very professionally, and I'm going to pronounce every word completely. If I am hanging out with my girls, though,
At Meg the Stallion concert
a Meg Thee Stallion concert, which I did go to
with
both the
twice.
Austin and the Houston Meg Thee Stallion concerts because I love her. Then that's when I'm busting out the glitter makeup, the high heel boot. I'm probably dancing a bit different than you would ever see at, say, a more professional event. And I'm still myself. I am just aligning my energy to the energy of the space.
Yeah.
Code switching is a choice that is often made, especially by women of color, so that we can navigate whatever space we're trying to exist within.
Mhm.
And it's one that is a very personal choice. I always like to say this. People will assume that because I will code switch in certain spaces, either to fit in more or to make sure that what I'm saying is going to be heard and implemented a little bit better, that I'm going to judge another woman or anyone for not code switching. But one of my biggest idols is a woman named Jazzy. I went to undergraduate school with her, and
Shout out to Jazzy.
Jazzy was amazing. She was so loud. You knew that she was in the room. And a job had told her, "Oh, you need to be more quiet. Like, this is an office space." And she's like, "You know what? I'm a loud person. This is who I am. I'm going to have to go find a different job because this is not who I am and it's not going to work." And good for her. Office had every right to have its boundaries, and she had every right to decide that she wasn't the right fit. And there are plenty of times where I'm not the right fit. I'm going to be louder. I'm going to be more
Mhm,
glittery,
mhm.
depending on what it is. So, yeah, that's a little bit into code switching.
Okay. And then go back to the clipboard and the blue shoes.
Yes. So I am in full on professional, like
Mhm.
ergonomist mode, going into all these factories. Well, then I switched to doing the research with African American hair braiders, and some of them work out of their home. A good 50% of the women and men that I was speaking to were working out of their homes. And here I am showing up at their door with a clipboard and a collared shirt. They didn't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
They thought that I was there they
Get
were worried.
perspective.
Yeah. Like, they're worried that I'm gonna get them in trouble with some type of regulatory body,
Mhm.
and that is a very genuine concern, especially the way that hair licensing in the state of Texas works. You go through all that licensing and they don't teach you anything about black hair, but it's an expensive process, and so they can get in trouble if they're not doing things based off of how the regulatory system says they should, but also the regulatory system doesn't know anything about what they're actually doing. So these systems are completely mixed matched. So I learned to tone it down, not wear my collared shirt. I still needed the clipboard because I needed somewhere to write, but I was able to make it feel more natural
Mhm.
and still get much better answers to my questions, get connected with way more participants. And sometimes I would actually just go on and have them do my hair because their time is money, and I completely respect that. Also, I love getting my hair done.
Win double win-win for everybody.
Exactly.
So you definitely are a curious soul. You're just, like, very curious. What like, has that always been there?
Yes, yeah. I can remember getting in trouble in kindergarten for asking too many questions. And I'm like, I'm just trying to connect these dots. You told me
Yeah.
that this is true and this is true. I just want to know how it goes together.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always been at the core of who I am. I ask why before I say yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And at this point, I think it's working for me. So I don't think it's ever gonna change.
I know, right? I think my report card used to say, "She visits too much with people,
Right.
she talks too much." She visits too much and she talks too much. I'm like, "Look what I've done." I love it. And for you, you're like, you're the ultimate curious soul.
Yeah, and I don't like repetitive tasks, so I would get in trouble for not doing all of my homework, but once I understood the technique that they were trying to teach me, I was like, "Alright, I'm done," and I know that's not how school's supposed to work, but until you give me a project or let me show you the hands-on application, I'm not gonna sit there and do 1,000 math problems that are all exactly the same.
Same, yeah, I hate it. So I used to be a promo model for a long time, and I would have to go to stores and do, like, events, and they would say to me, like, "Okay, you need to sell 40 bottles of this wine." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And it would take most chicks for 4 hours to sell those 40 bottles or sell maybe 5 or 10. I would sell those bottles of wine in, like, an hour and a half, and I thought to myself, "You know what? The job is done. I still should be paid, compensated for those 4 hours, but
Mhm.
I don't wanna be standing in this grocery store. I'm just gonna go to the next place." I would just leave, and I would get in trouble, but then they realize, like, she's doing her job.
Yeah, I have gotten better at communicating to my bosses about how they need to communicate what they need me to do
Mhm.
because I'm going to hit whatever the check mark is. Let's make sure it's the correct check mark.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely feel you.
Mm. One thing people don't know about you, or they do know about you, is that you're a Leo, and I just love Leos. I'm a Leo rising, so I feel like Leos and me are just like little kindred spirits. Not little, big kindred spirits. Talk about this Leo magnetism of like how you get job offers and people want to work with you, and just like you just magnetize stuff. So tell me about it.
So, it's funny because my friends that have known me a long time, they're like, you just go out there and do things, and then more things happen because of it. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's what's going on. Uh, I know exactly what I want people to feel like after they've interacted with me because I've met the people that have the ability to make others just feel cruddy after their interactions. I did recently learn that you're a Scorpio. I do love Scorpios, but a lot of Scorpios can also kind of control the energy in a negative way. You're
Oh yeah,
thankfully
yeah,
not
yeah.
one of those, Leo rising.
I'm definitely not because, and also my sister didn't listen to this, but my sister's a Scorpio too, and she used to be one of those Scorpios. She's done a lot of healing. That's like the dark
Yeah,
side of Scorpio. But I do have that ability to do that, and whenever I need to, I could freaking blow up the energy in the room. And
right.
I had to do that recently with a family member because like they disrespected me, and I was like, "Oh hell no," blow it up. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
love healed Scorpios. They're
I'm a
the
healed
greatest.
Scorpio.
Yeah, a few years ago, I just realized that, like, I kinda had this ability to flip the energy of a room without really trying too hard, and when I started to actually understand what that meant, I made some really, like, hard decisions about what I wanted to use that ability for. And it's a cool superpower to have. Like, I will go into an environment where I don't know anyone and I'll walk out of the room with like 1,000 new friends. Now, I am also an introvert. So then I have to kind of go hide out for a few days afterwards. But it's interesting because I will get people that will come up and they will pretty quickly tell me very intimate personal details of their lives
Mhm.
because they've identified that I'm going to be as safe of a space as I can be in that moment. I'm not saying that I never fail or I'm never fatigued, but I try my best. And that serves me quite well in my job because sometimes there's only like 3 or 4 people in the entire world that I can talk to about whatever the research project is that I'm on. And so when I'm with those participants, I need them to understand very quickly that they can get technical with me, they can be vulnerable with me, and that we can solve our problems together. And I think that it's so cool. That's not something that I really have to practice at. The only thing I really have to practice at is like turning it down sometimes so that when I do need a break, I'm actually getting that break. Shout out to my friends that'll like help ward it off when they know that I'm just overwhelmed.
Do you get jealousy towards you as a Leo, or do you not feel it?
I do get jealousy towards me, and because I'm not gonna say I never feel jealousy, I absolutely do, but it's not one of the more common things that I tend to feel.
Leos, and I asked this question, they all say that. Sorry, go
'Cause
ahead.
I'm like, "All right, yeah, we're all just out here and everyone's got
Like,
their own
that's jealousy.
thing,"
That's
and
not even me.
yeah, and so I've gotten better at understanding and empathizing when people are jealous because if you're in a vulnerable position and someone comes along and they can validate you and help you feel empowered, and then you see them doing that to someone else, then you might start to question, was it genuine? And that's a very scary thought to have in your mind when you are in a vulnerable position. And so I try to put a lot of energy into making sure people understand, like, I validate the light in you. I'm also validating this light in this other person. Those lights are different and I don't want them to be the same. I think that they're both beautiful and I'm happy that they are on this earth. It doesn't always work out, but I do try. But yeah, at the end of the day, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what happened. I was just being nice to people.
And they fell in love with me or were jealous of me or all of the above.
Listen, the introvert is the strongest trait in me. So, like, sometimes I'm like, I really don't understand. I'm just trying to get back home with my dog.
Well, so Lena is my client, and we've been working with her. We've been working with you for a while. We had it for another project, and then yes, so I've been working with you for a while. And the first time that I worked with you, or the first few months, I said to you, and I've said this to you many times, I'm like, you need to be famous. You need to be famous. You need to be a star. All the things. I was, and I've said it to you many times. How does it feel to receive that? And like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think so. I am in no way comparing myself to Simone Biles because she is the greatest gymnast of all
Oh
times.
my gosh,
But like,
I love watching her
uh huh.
so much. Andrew said that she has that Kobe face, like, she
Hmm.
locks it in. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah. And she's so just like on it when she's on. And then when she's off, she's chilling and it's
mhm,
wonderful. I watch her in interviews sometimes and you can tell that she knows that she's done great work, but she also doesn't understand some of the fanfare around it at times. Like she didn't even know what go meant at one time. And I identify with that energy because, especially when I was more regularly doing workshops in Austin, kind of pre COVID, we could still get together. I like logged on or I like got on to like start a workshop and someone goes, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was a Lena Clark production." And, like, I'm, like, fumbling with the microphones and sound checks and stuff, and I hear that, and I was like, "Oh, what do you mean? What do
mhm."
you mean?" And she goes, "Oh, I just love every time I come to one of your things." I'm like, "Oh, people are repeatedly coming and they're seeking this out, and it's actually a miss that I didn't have my name prominently on this."
It's
So,
changing with our help, but that's
yes,
changing.
yes, you're helping me do that more because yeah, I'll forget to market the things that I do. But it's like, "Oh, a lot of people need this product. Let's just go
Mhm.
do it. Let's just go make it happen." So it's really funny. I will tell you, I don't think I've told you this. So I go back to Houston and I visit my parents all the time, and there's a phenomenal yoga studio out there. And so I'll drop in every few months and have some fun. The instructors are amazing and they know that, like, I casually like to dance or I had mentioned that. They had a rumor going that I was a touring dancer, Like, they thought I was touring, like, Lizzo or Beyoncé or someone.
Mhm.
And so I walk into the studio at one point, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how was tour?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Yeah, weren't you, like, at the Beyoncé?" I was like, "No, I went and saw Beyoncé one time. I wasn't dancing with Beyoncé." So, it's great to get rumors like that. I look,
UX researcher slash Beyoncé dancer.
if that's in the cards, then I receive it, because if other people wanna speak it into existence for me, like Lizzo, Meg Thee Stallion, Beyonce, all Houston hotties, so
Amazing, amazing. I have a and kind of basic, not really a basic question, a deep question, but just what does magnetism mean to you?
I think it means being intentional about the energy that's going to stick, because we can't control what other people are gonna do or throw at you, call you, how they're gonna try to block you. But when you're magnetic, you're making a very intentional choice for what energy is actually going to define your space. And that's going to be, it's actually one of the hardest journeys, because you're actively rejecting so many things that just will not work for you. And you're only answering to the call of what you have decided your life will be. And you need a support system to achieve it, by the way.
Hmm. And what do you feel like can be, or if there is a correlation between UX and magnetism? Because I feel like there's like an elimination, like you mentioned, like an elimination where the UX experience is about eliminating the things that are not supposed to be there and bringing in the things that are only should be there that are serving of the highest good.
Yeah, in UX, we have things called dark patterns. There's so many ways that you can design a system to be detrimental to the users or
Oof.
overly addictive,
Mhm.
or you can do so much to a human, to their psychology, all sorts of things that are just really negative and bad. And
I was like immediately thought like The Sims.
yes, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's changes that are made to systems all of the time to make sure that the most vulnerable users are not negatively impacted, especially with children,
Mm.
because children inherently cannot consent to a bunch of different things. They're still developing. So if they consume certain types of material, or they're just too addicted to something while their brains are developing, that can cause lifetime problems.
Mm.
And there are those that unfortunately will get that type of information, and they will decide to run with it because maybe they can profit off of it, or maybe it gives them power. And there are others that will get that type of information and do everything they can to avoid creating those bad situations. I prefer to only work with the people that want to avoid the bad situations
Mhm.
that is out there. And it's important to be really intentional as if you're building a product or you're in charge of the system, to be intentional that you are supporting those users across the board and not creating more bad than good.
Mm. I love that. I feel I definitely feel like there was a lot of systems, at least when I was growing up, that have negatively impacted my life for sure, and I've had to do a lot of, like, clearing of that, like, I don't watch this type of content, I'm not into this crazy dopamine spike stuff, like, it's an active process, and I can see it with how the millennial look right now, a lot of millennial moms, I see the way that they're, I would say, training their kids or guiding their kids. Not everyone, not everyone's perfect, but like, I even see, like, my sister being very conscious of, like, the screen time and what I give her and what she watches and how she consumes it. Because, like you said, the brain is developing and then it can latch onto something, and then that's its whole worldview.
Exactly. I'm definitely the type that I love being a millennial. I love that I grew up with technology. I love that kids nowadays have so much access to technology. There's so many amazing things that can happen with it. But then from like a physiological perspective, if you're always right in front of a screen and there's lights flashing at you and you're getting that dopamine hit constantly, that can be a problem.
Mm,
And so before so many parents became intentional about screen time, there were public health initiatives to educate about screen time
Yeah.
because we don't know what we don't know. And parents have one of the hardest jobs out there because there's always something new that can mess up your child for you. Like, here you are thinking, "Oh, I'm doing a great thing. I'm having my child get onto this iPad
Education
every
app.
day."
Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, do math problems or all of these other amazing things that it can do, and now you're telling me that it could just be really bad for them and damaging their eyesight and dysregulating their emotion. Like, what do you mean? Why is everything always on fire? And so that's another reason that I like the education that's just very intelligent. This is how you limit it. This is how you balance it. This is the reasons why. And it's okay if it's not every single day. If little Johnny during the summer wants to have a full day of just going crazy, it's not the end of the world. At least they're probably inside instead of who knows where in a
Mhm.
different neighborhood. But just giving people the tools they need to adequately balance all of the questions in life is so important.
Mm. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What are the next steps for you? What's the next iteration? What era are you stepping into?
Yeah, so I have been doing a lot of mentorship and career coaching for others that want to get into UX or want to level up in it in some type of way over the last few years. I'm now realizing that as a UXer that has some career coaching in them, that there's actually so many fields that people are interested in that need that guidance. So I've been expanding those services. That's been really exciting, becoming way more efficient with it. I'll have some courses out soon that are self guided so people can, if you only have a little bit of energy to promote your career or to elevate yourself, here's that little boost that you need that's going to meet you where you are. Long term, I am looking to do more research for wider types of company. I've loved doing things for large industries. It's great. You have all the resources in the world. It's so much fun.
Mhm.
But now I'm really getting into working with smaller businesses. They're scrappy, they're hungry, they're unique in what you can do with the research.
More
And that
creative sometimes too.
the more creative, yeah. I have one client who, so it's very normal in my industry after you do research to create a PowerPoint presentation. And maybe people will look at that presentation again, maybe they won't, kind of depends. So for one of my private clients, I actually helped her develop some commercials. And that was the end result of all of the research we did. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't that like more market research or something else? I'm like, no, I was doing user experience research, understanding what the pain points were. And then instead of telling people, here's this long article about like everything, no, here's a fun commercial that hits all the points and that's catchy and that is going to help everyone understand why my client is the right person for them to take their business to.
Mm. Where do they find you? What's your website and what's your socials?
So my website is sunfloweruxteam.com and my Instagram is at Lena where you at. So at sign Lena where you at. I had to change my Instagram handle to that because every time I'm talking to someone, they ask, where are you, Lena? And then also my LinkedIn and Lena Clark, LenaClark. Reach out to me on there. I'm going to be posting more and more case studies on there here soon. I'm really excited to share them with everyone.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Magnetic Online Leaders podcast. I love you so much. And I just love your light and your energy and your curiosity and your brain. It's really incredible to witness. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.